Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. Uh, I look, we're obviously talking about this game. Like, I
Right.
just, we're doing this a little bit differently. I was kind of explaining this to Ross. I wanted to try something because that way, we all see all the post game shows and stuff. So I wanted to see about, well, let's wait a minute and wait a day, and then see about what Allen says again, and then the
Mhm.
players, and then let's come talk about this game a little bit more in depth. But before we get all into that, Ross, how's things going, my man? Good job on the Saints show, man. That was great.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a cool little new muscle to flex and something to try out. And
Mhm.
so seems that everything went well. So very grateful that I got the opportunity. How was the trip to and from Los Angeles?
It was good, man. I'd say you're becoming the Taysom Hill of all the things. Like you're doing 8,000 different things, and you make it work, which is admirable for sure.
Thank you, man. I
So
appreciate
it
that.
works harder for sure. It was good, man. I flew in, left about 8 o'clock LA time. I mean, I was up at 5 a.m. LA time, so it wasn't too bad. But good flight in, good flight there. Not so good on the game though. That was
Yeah.
I don't know how many more times I could say that was hard to watch, or that was painful, or all these different things. Like this is unbelievable in some aspects. Like I just like we sat through all this week and said, okay, we bought into it. They just get healthier. They're getting all these key pieces back. That should lead to more offense. It didn't. They
Mhm.
cleaned up some of the tackling, but then they have big explosive plays given up. They have chances to get picks or get turnovers. They can't. Like, man, your initial thoughts on how bad this game was, because it was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, one of the kind of toughest games that we've seen from the New Orleans Saints in quite some time, and it makes it challenging because you've already had going into this game, you had 5 losses in a row going into it, a 6 loss in a row. To have that 6 loss in a row, and it still be also one of the worst performances that we've seen. That's where things I think get a little bit concerning, and the fact that the team didn't really take any steps forward on the offensive side, considering the pieces that they had. I'll give them some credit. They ran the ball more efficiently.
Yeah.
Um, Chris Olave goes over 100 receiving yards for the first time this season. But if you're not able to string drives together, if you're not able to convert third downs, 13% on third downs in this game, none of that's going to matter. I don't think the Saints and nothing in terms of red zone opportunities, anything like that, like not being able to cash any of that stuff in. You can have all the yardage that you want. If all that yardage is happening between your goal line and the 50-yard line, then you're not really succeeding as an offense. And I think that that's a lot of what we saw. And then the Saints defense started off really strong, looked like a team that was well rested. But
Hmm.
60, 64, 63 plays out on the field for them, 68 for the offense. Just, not enough to be able to really turn anything in terms of a winning performance.
Yeah. Look, I mean, and that was the thing, is we talked about this, we highlighted it. Complementary football. Like the
Yep.
defense does its job and the offense can't get things to go. And look, I said and wrote about it, we talked about it, but you didn't need to put like crazy points up on the board, but they started with a safety, which is pretty good. And offensively, they were at least to not going three and out and such. But then you have the formula where Herbert gets the big run and all these other things. Like it's just one of those where like you could just call it. Like you knew it was going to happen. It's like, okay, the defense made a couple of stops. The offense can't get anything going. Now the Chargers get the ball back. Now they're going to start putting points up on the board. Now the Saints have to counter. They can't counter. I mean, it was a tough day at the office for Spencer Rattler. I mean, it was hard. I mean, there's so many different things you can break down and take away from this game that were just not good. I mean, but I think the offense struggled heavily.
Hmm.
The thing is, you got some good things that worked, like Alvin Kamara worked pretty well at times, like the screenplay out to the side. I mean,
Hmm.
his all-purpose yards were good there, and I was surprised not more Taysom Hill in this
I
game
was
a
very
little bit
surprised
more
about
too.
that. Yeah.
And then you start using Kendre Miller, and he gets hurt. His other hamstring, like, just can't make this stuff up, man. And so now
Yeah.
that's a concern. Bub Means gets hurt at the end of the game when it matters, doesn't matter at all. You know what I mean? Like this is just like I mean, this team's in hell. I don't know how I said purgatory before, but this is hell. I mean, this is
Yeah.
just so hard. But I just look at how not only the the questionable, like the play calling, but they get in 3rd and 5 and then a pre-snap penalty or a penalty. Now they're back to 3rd and 10, or they go
Yeah.
a good run. Here's a flag. Like we're literally sitting up in the press box being like, we just knew it was coming because as soon as
Hmm.
run, here comes the holding call. So this team is I don't know. It's either not disciplined, they're not getting the message. I mean, all of the above probably applies here.
Yeah, I think that's the tricky part. And this again goes right back to 2023. It goes right back to 2022, to where it's just this moving target of what's wrong, and what the issue is. We've seen this team lose games because they can't close games out with a lead. We've seen this team lose games because they aren't able to close a gap. We've seen this team now also lose games because they can't produce on the offensive side of the football. It's just exactly what we talked about going into the game. Don't find another way to lose. And the Saints found another way to lose. Only 6 points on offense in this game. They did have a missed field goal, but still 6 points on offense. You had the two points that kind of got cashed in as well because of that safety. But really, that safety came down to a Los Angeles miscue and in the Saints being opportunistic in that situation, as opposed to anything that the New Orleans Saints did create. In fact, there was a point where the Saints could have gotten a second safety in that game, but again, can't finish at the quarterback. And so it's just like it's all of these little issues, bad angles. You saw the angle that they missed on the big run for Justin Herbert, where he was able to pick up additional yardage because the angles that were taken by the defenders. You saw and this is what I was kind of referencing earlier about all the plays that the defense played, but really it comes down to 4 or 5 explosive plays that really tell the story of the
Mhm.
matchup, right? Big 60-yard catch and run, another 45-yard pass as well. You get that big pass to Joshua Palmer towards the end of the game down the right sideline. You've got the big run by Justin Herbert. Like, they're all there. And those explosive plays kind of not set the tone, but those are the ones that ended up being the difference making moments throughout the game. The Saints had some explosive plays as well, but a lot of them coming on the final drives,
Yeah.
or again, putting them in position to where they're just about to get past that 50-yard line or just cross that 50-yard line. And then they aren't able to pick up the steam from there. It's like the drives just kind of stall once they cross into enemy territory. Then you start to see the penalties, and all of a sudden you're 2nd and 6 turns into 2nd and 16. You're playing from behind schedule at that point and all those other things. I mentioned the Saints 13% third down percentage, but a big part of the reason for that is because of their failures on 1st and 2nd down, and in particular the undisciplined play of the penalties. They averaged 9.4 yards to go on their 3rd downs over the course of that game. That's not the place that you want to be playing from.
Right. And I mean, look, I thought the defense played better, but the explosives, like you said, are what killed them. And look, that play you were talking about, almost have him in Herbert down for a safety, and then he throws the ball, and Alante almost has a pick. Like he makes that play, they at least
Right.
get it right in that field position. And even towards the end of the game, they had an opportunity where Pete Warner, like it was a tip near the goal line, and he
Yeah.
almost
Right.
has a pick there. It's just like this team can't catch a break. Like they
Yeah.
really can't. Like this is just it's just not going their way. And of course, 6 straight losses, worst start or worst since they haven't had that happen obviously since 2005. We know how that
Right.
ended up, and that season was really bad as it was. But I think this is probably a little bit more of the offensive ineptitude, I guess you could say. I mean, look, I know the defense has their hands dirty in this too. I mean, look, but I think when you're not able to move the ball and then you have to swap quarterbacks because you said you needed a spark, and then all the undisciplined play, all these different things, it's just, again, it was weird seeing. What would you say with Spencer Rattler's biggest problem was? Was it more of like they just couldn't get in sync? Was it just the fact that those penalties killed him, or was he just not? Did he just not have it yesterday?
Yeah, I think that wasn't. I mean, out of Spencer Rattler's 3 performances, I would say that was probably the one where he struggled the most consistently. There was pressure on around 30% of his passes, not an egregious amount in terms of what he was doing there. And so I think the biggest issue is that he had a barely 50% completion percentage when not pressured. He had a barely 70 passer rating when not pressured in this game. And so I think that like those are the things you're really looking at, is that even when he was kept clean, either the timing with the receivers was off, or the decision making wasn't there, or you're having to check down, the coverage is good on the back end. Like, this was the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. You just didn't expect to see 8 points, or really 6 points of offensive output, even going up against that. And so I think that there were a lot of the, simple rookie quarterback things that just ended up kind of being the story for Spencer Rattler. And then those things didn't necessarily get better when Jake Haener came in. I thought that Jake Haener delivered some better passes. He was more decisive and he made quicker decisions. I think those are the things so you saw the ball move a little bit more with Jake Haener at the helm. But again, same issues once there was pressure there, or once, he completed a lower percentage of his passes when he was clean versus when he was under pressure, all these other things, like just getting the offense going, and then drops for the receivers and all these other things, like all that kind of contributed. So I think that there's pieces of it that you look at that are the quarterback. I think there's pieces of it that you look at it that are the pass catchers, the offensive line. Like there's so much of that. And then don't forget the fact too, that the team had to move away from the run game almost the entirety of the second half, which meant that they never got comfortable, and you never really got to put Spencer Rattler in his best situation, which is as a play action passer, which, by the way, is the same situation for Derek Carr. And so now you got to wonder, if Derek Carr does come back next week against Carolina and the Saints can't run the football, do you still eliminate where Derek Carr is most effective because you can't run play action as effectively or as efficiently? So you got to be concerned about the ripple effects there. Saints got an influx of health going into this game against Los Angeles. It didn't make a difference. Hard to say that an influx of health at a later time is going to make any additional difference.
Which is funny because this is the quote from Dennis Allen after this game. This is one of the things he says: "We'll go back, we'll get to work, hopefully get a couple more guys back, and hopefully start playing some better football."
Hopefully.
That's maddening. Hopefully. You're using that we're hopeful a team just turns it around. Like it just, I get the lack of confidence in this team right now. Like it is just, it's laughable. I mean, I get it. I understand. But for the head coach to sit there and say these things it comes off like it doesn't know what to do to fix it. He's saying, oh, well, the answer is in the building. The players are talking about having a players only meeting and all this other stuff. Like this is stuff that should have been fixed last year, that was supposedly fixed last year. It hasn't been fixed. And now they've lost 6 straight after starting 2-0. And hopefully there's that word, they can beat the worst team in the league in the Panthers. But if they lose that game, they don't have a leg to stand on anymore. And it's really confusing because you always hear the speak talk of coach better, play better, execute better, and all this stuff. And this team just hasn't been able to do it. I mean, there's been times, but they're not consistent at it. And it's just really hard. And again, I don't know what the magic bullet. I don't know if you just say, well, they fire the head coach, everything gets better. I mean, look at New York.
Oh no,
fired Robert Saleh, and I just don't think that that's the way the organization thinks either. And I know that's gonna, ruffle a couple of feathers for fans, but it's just not the direction they are. So I guess in a way they're kind of stuck. And I don't know where they go from here.
Yeah, they're pretty stuck. I mean, at the absolute worst, you lose to Carolina. I think at that point, if you lose to the worst team in the NFL, you're going to have to do something. Something's going to have to happen somewhere. I don't know where that is, what that is, but if the Saints do the unexpected, I would consider it very unexpected at this time, and make an in-season change at head coach, I think that that's the time that potentially happens. But again, I don't know that they lose the Carolina Panthers is the thing. And then the thing that's so crazy is that like they beat the Carolina Panthers, and then is that the hope that you're trying to sell to the fan base, that the hope that you're trying to sell to the team is like, oh, look, beat the worst team in the league again for the second time this season? I don't know if that's going to be enough. You know what I mean? I don't think that puts you back in the contender category. And honestly, I don't think any player or coach would make the argument that a win against the Carolina Panthers puts you in that contender category. But I will say this, it's more than just 2024. And that's the thing that I think that people have to really kind of take into consideration here as well, is that we have seen the same issues from the New Orleans Saints, whether it be tackling, whether it be questions of effort, whether it be execution problems, whether it be the offense not working, whether it be whatever, health. We've seen the same thing 2022, 2023, and now 2024. I would venture to say that we saw it in 2021, Peyton's last year as well. And I just don't know how you sell another year of this. I don't know how you convince anybody that this is going just exactly as planned or enough as planned, however it is that you want to look at it. The other thing that's really kind of frustrating about it is that you have a team that's now talking about having a players only meeting, and
Mhm.
that they want to take it into their own hands in terms of getting things fixed. That's not like, that feels like that should be a joint effort, not the players having to take it amongst themselves. Like, this should be about everybody in this situation. And it brings me back to the end of the season where all the stories came out and we heard all about the big meeting of, buy-in and culture and all the other stuff. If they got all the buy-in, if they got the culture that they wanted, which everything we were told is that they
Yeah.
got the buy-in, they got the culture, but now here you are in the same place. It starts to make you wonder if what you're asking people to buy into starts to make you wonder if the culture maybe is the problem.
Mhm. No, I would agree. I mean, and look, the proof is in the results. Like,
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what
you
DA
can't
said too.
see
He's
it.
like, it's a results oriented business, right?
And the proof is there. Like, you can't tell me that this is a better football team, that you're better than 2-6, because you're not better than 2-6. You are what your record says. And
Right.
Dennis Allen has said that before. And so
Hmm.
we even said about this game, even if they were to beat the Chargers, we said that they weren't going to be back. Like, we never
Right.
thought that in this case. They beat the Panthers next week and they beat up on the Panthers. Still don't think so. Like, I
Right.
envisioned a scenario where they beat the Panthers and then the Falcons come to town and just beat the brakes off of them. And then the Falcons fans take over the Superdome. That would be the lowest point of probably the last decade for this team. And if that
Yeah.
happens, they have no leg to stand on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Is it's like
Yeah.
you got a division rival that comes into your house, embarrasses you, and then takes over the Superdome. Like, enough's enough. Like, I that's what I kind of wonder is like, when is enough enough? Like, why
Mm.
are you okay with mediocrity? Why are you okay with these results? Because this is a proud franchise that built themselves on winning, right? Like, that was the whole thing, that they sold themselves with Sean and all these other things. And it's just it's just tough. And even towards the end of the games, like, Chris Olave, he almost got hurt again with a
Right.
concussion. That was crazy to watch. But at the end of the game, like, why is Bub Means still in the game running a route when he's hurt? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
why are the timeouts not called? Like, all these things. Like, it just peels back too much to say this is a much bigger problem than just the players. Like, the players can do this. And I know, like, again, the locker room this week was good. Like, but I just get the sense that we're about to go, maybe not to turmoil, but this is bad territory that we're about to enter, because now all the
Yeah.
names
It's
are coming up for trades and all this other stuff
right.
too.
Yeah, it's dismay if nothing else, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's
yes.
going to be the big thing. And I think Dennis Allen made it very clear that it's that whether he intended to or not, uh, that like the team is not likely to be buyers at the trade deadline. He's
Mhm,
saying that it's the players in the
mhm,
facility, in the facility now that have to kind of like get things operating better. Um, they have sort of made a pretty easy to find statement in that they don't plan to be sellers either, re-signing, getting that extension done with Alvin Kamara, which was an extension that he deserved and was a good move, in my opinion, for New Orleans, even though it is a little sentimental. I thought that still, like, that's the guy that you want to build your offense around and build your team around. That makes sense to me. Um, but I don't know then if you're going to be able to flip it with just the guys in the building, not because the guys in the building can't get it done. We saw what they did week 1 and week 2. I think that the bigger question mark is the leadership, the accountability, the coaching, the decision making. It's all those things, everything. I mean, you look at the just the conservatism on third downs in this game, not wanting to push the ball beyond the first down marker, staying in those situations where you're still running up the middle on third and short, but you're not using Taysom Hill, who you were so excited to get back in the matchup and all these other things. So it's just a lot of the third down play calling I thought was really curious. The first and second down discipline on the offensive side, or lack thereof. And then, of course, you're trying to do it with 2 young quarterbacks who have less than 100 passing attempts in their careers. That's not going to be a good formula. It's not going to be a formula for winning at all. And it kind of makes you wonder, too, if the Saints maybe, I get that they were excited about their young quarterbacks, but should they have kept a veteran quarterback around to be the backup to Derek Carr while you focus on developing the other 2 young guys? Do you keep a veteran QB on your practice squad for a situation like this where you need a starter for multiple weeks and everything?
mhm.
I think that might be something you have to look at the quarterback position, and then you can question the depth at a lot of different positions on this team as well.
Yeah, and they made it clear that that was the direction they didn't want to go. They didn't want to pay for a veteran backup or
Right.
anything like that. Like, they didn't want to spend the money on it and stuff. And I guess the thing is, we've heard accountability, like, till we're blue in the face. But where is the accountability? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, at what point you just say enough's enough? And I don't think we're seeing any of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and again, this is what we're seeing, and I don't know if we'll ever get any evidence that suggests otherwise. But again, this is just maddening to see this team fall out so much. And now I forget what exactly the number was. I think they've been outscored 110 to
40 something.
55 or 40,
50 something.
110.
Yeah.
I gave them too many points, probably. Yeah, 45, maybe. What was it? 46, maybe. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
28, and then they had 10 and then 8. So yeah, that
Yeah.
math would be 46. 110 to 46. 28 of those came in one quarter. One was a garbage touchdown, and then yeah, that was it. Like 35
Yeah.
points came in. We're just kind of like anomalies. So
Yeah.
it's just
And
man,
and also that's what the last 3 weeks, right?
yeah.
So one of those is a punt return touchdown. The other one's and then 2 points comes from a
Yep.
safety, right?
Yep.
So it's not even the offense that's putting up all those points.
Mhm.
The Saints put up 91 points in the first 2 games. They put up 94 in the 6 games since then, as a whole.
Whew.
As a whole,
Yeah,
like
that's something. And
yeah,
look, they might get Derek Carr back, but here's the thing: it's addition with by subtraction. Like, you know what I'm saying? You get Derek Carr back this week, but now you don't probably have Kendra Miller, and then
right.
now you
What
don't
happens
have
with
Bub
Marshawn?
Means,
Hmm.
and now you might not have Marshawn. Like, they just continue to get hurt. And then I saw after the game, I think Adam Prentice got nicked up too, so it's another one that you got to watch out. Jawan got evaluated for a concussion. I mean, they literally cannot catch a break. And so I don't know if it's one of those things where it gets a lot more ugly than it does before it gets, better. But, at the same time, Panthers are up next. Andy Dalton on the road, all this other stuff. And then they've got Kirk Cousins, and then the Falcons, and then Jameis, who all he did was beat the Ravens in his game yesterday. So it's just it's just something.
Crazy. Crazy.
Yeah,
I want to
but
see.
good for
I want
him.
to
Good for
see.
him.
Yeah, for sure. Good for him. Like, we're all about it. But like the thing about that one is, I'm curious how much of that was that one game bump that you typically get when the
Sure.
backup quarterback comes in and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll
They've
see.
got the Los Angeles Chargers up next, that number one scoring defense. So be interested to see how that goes. And then then they come here to New Orleans. But man, like it's not an easy road for the Saints. I mean, I know it's so funny. I know you were posting earlier today. You had your relook at the strength of schedule and why strength of schedule doesn't mean anything. Here's
Crumple
a
it up.
perfect season to kind of give you that, or another perfect
Yes,
season
another.
to kind of give you that realization. I think.
Yeah, and look, the reality is, 2-6. You've got 9 games left. You can't lose anymore. You just really can't. Like, I mean, at
Nope.
this point, if you get to 9-8, you're not making the playoffs. I hate to break it to you, but you're not going to make it because of all the other stuff that's happening around you. Like these other teams that are playing well, like your Arizonas that are playing well. Green Bay is going to get back in this mix. There's all these other teams that are just going to beat you out. Washington looks pretty good. Philly, who beat you earlier in the season, we said that could be the game that comes back to haunt them. It probably could, but having them come back and win 7 of the last 9 just doesn't seem realistic. Like, I
Yeah.
don't see it. I don't care who they're playing, and I don't care what the schedule says. It's just based on this team. It doesn't matter what's in front of them. They just shoot themselves in the foot and they trip over themselves. Like, they just cannot get it going for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
a lot of that's on coaching. Some of that's on players. It probably goes higher than that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot. Like everybody's got to kind of point the finger back at themselves when you
Sure.
have a season like this, and then when you have a run of several seasons, like we've seen the Saints, who look like they're on their way to their 4th straight uh, season without making it to the playoffs. To your point about the schedule they have ahead of them, right, and the idea of like easy schedules, blah blah blah. Remember
Yeah.
that easy schedule still has Los Angeles Rams. It still has the
Mhm.
Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. It's got the Washington Commanders and Offensive Rookie of the Year. I'm already calling it for Jaden Daniels, which done. No more. Stop the count. And then several other still good football teams left on this schedule for New
Got to
Orleans.
play Tampa
Um,
again.
Yep, you got Tampa again. You still have
You got the
Atlanta
Giants,
again.
which
You've got I'm not too worried about the Giants.
I
But
mean, well,
but
no,
who
hold
knows?
on. This
Who knows?
team,
Who
I
knows?
don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe I don't. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like if there's any team that shoots themselves in the foot more than New Orleans, it's both of the teams in New York. What a failed
Yeah.
experiment the Jets situation has turned into.
Phew.
But
Yeah.
so at least the Saints didn't do that, right? The Saints didn't go out there and spend a whole bunch and try to put together their super team and rebuild their Green Bay Packers and everything like that. And so at least they didn't go that far. But man, I look at like what's remains ahead for the Saints, and I just ask myself, like, is it possible that this team wins? Honestly, John, what I think you have to do is win 8 of the last 9, right? Like, you got to get to double digits.
Yeah,
And
you
I
do.
just don't see a world in which that happens. I can't. Like, it would be unreasonable to say, oh yeah, that's the expectation.
Yeah. And I mean, look, you can sit here and say you're not out of it until you're out of it, but
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
if you
those
don't
players got to
start
go out there and play.
winning, if you don't
Yeah.
start winning, and then I mean, again, you're down to where you can only lose, like you said, maybe one game. And they're going to lose that one game, I promise. And it'll probably come in the next several weeks. But asking this team to go get hot and hit, 8 of 9, it's not happening. Like, nobody
Yeah.
expects that. And if you're selling yourself that, I need what you're putting into your body or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. It's just really tough because we heard it, we bought into all of the stuff, and we saw training camp. Training camp looked good. This team looked really good in 2-0, but I feel like they're clinging to saying, well, that's the team who we really are, not the team that is actually in front of us. I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think that's where things get really tricky too. Let's say if the best case scenario does happen, right? And they win, let's say 4 out of their next 5. Do you really believe that that's who they are? Or do you believe more in the 6-game losing streak? Or do you go back to the first 2 games? Like, it's going to be so tough to kind of look through that and say that this team is anything other than their 6-game losing streak. That's going to be a very hard reputation for them to break, beat, change the minds of, all those other things. And I think rightfully so. Like, any team that goes out there and loses 6 straight games is going to be recognized for being the team that went out there and lost 6 straight games, especially when expectations were high and all these other things. The Saints, a team that expected to get to the top of their division right now, is instead in conversation along with the Carolina Panthers, the New England Patriots, the New York Jets, the New York Giants, the Jacksonville Jaguars, as one of the worst teams in the NFL. And that's definitely not where this team wanted to be, but unfortunately it's where they are, and it's coming from a lot of different angles. I don't think I can point the finger at one specific thing. I don't think it's fair to point the finger at one specific thing, because then you're giving the rest of it. I think, like, what are the other things? I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot on this, but I'm just connecting a lot of dots.
You got to.
But like, people talk about effort a lot when it comes to this team. I think the more concerning factor is the idea that the effort is there, but that it's not leading to success, right? You can say, oh, well, they're just not trying, but that's false. I would fight that narrative all day. I don't believe that that's true, that this team is not trying, that this team isn't putting forth the effort, that they're not scratching, clawing, fighting. I don't believe that of this roster, these players. Right. However, the main issue then becomes the fact that there is effort without success. That to me is the bigger issue. And I think anytime that you say, like, oh, well, this is the issue, is that they're just not trying, you're letting them off of all the other stuff. When really the big issue here, and what should be the bigger concern, is that the effort is there. The success just simply isn't.
Yeah. And I think it was last week I said this. I'm going to bring it up again, that I had a former boss in a former retail settings. He always told me, don't get efforts confused with results, because at the bottom line, the results are what matters. And when your job performance is dictated on results and you're not delivering it, I can give all the effort in the world, but if I'm not meant to be a high-priced yacht salesman or insurance person or whatever, I could have all the effort in the world, but I'm still not closing sales or doing stuff like that. Like, that's kind of what this team is right now. It's just like, the effort's there, but it's not leading to results. And look, the big picture in the NFC, because right now they're 14th in the conference. Giants have to play still. They play Steelers. They should lose, so they probably stay at 14th. But right now, you look at the teams ahead of them. 9 and 10 or 8 and 9 right now is Philly at 4 and 2. Tampa's at 4 and 3. And then you got Dallas, Arizona, San Francisco. Who would have thought Dallas and San Francisco would be towards the bottom of the conference at this point? Rams, and then, the Saints. But right now it's Detroit, Washington, Seattle, Atlanta, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Chicago. So like the whole NFC North is in playoffs right now.
Yeah,
How is
man.
that
And
possible? You know what I mean?
it's crazy. And you got a team right now, one of those teams that you listed off, the Rams, they're surging at the moment,
Mhm.
right? Like they're an example of a team that got healthier and got better on the field, right? Like you
Yeah,
saw that Thursday night and everything. And so, I have a hard time kind of drawing the line in terms of like I have a hard time tracking kind of like where the line is drawn, excuse me, in the sand
mhm,
between sort of, what is being done versus what the expectation is.
yeah,
Because I think one is well under the other. And it's not working out favorably for New Orleans so far. So hey, we'll see. Look, the thing to know is that like the players, this is why I don't believe in tanking in the NFL. These players
sure,
work their tails off to get
yeah,
on that field and they dedicate their entire lives to being there. And so I don't think you're going to see any team tank. I don't believe in all that because I don't believe that you're going to have players who are actually going to go out there and do that. So those players are going to go out there and they're going to compete. Doesn't mean that they're going to win games. They're going to go out there and they're going to compete. And this isn't me trying to sell anybody on the fact that the Saints will turn their season around. That's not where I'm going.
no,
But
no,
just simply the fact of the matter is that, like, I was talking with Scott Shanley actually doing the post game show, and one of the things that he kept mentioning was you go out there, you continue to play, you take it one game at a time, because not only are you putting on tape what you're doing for your team, you're putting on tape for 31 other teams as well.
yep,
So every one of those players has every reason to go out there and do what they can. I just don't know that the system around them is, again, able to support that into a way, or take that and kind of bolster that in a way, so this team will be playing complementary football or winning football in time for it to matter, for it to have an impact on what the results of this season are as a whole.
yeah. I mean, and at this point, we're just pretty much just beating a dead horse. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah.
is, and it's just, at what point is enough enough? Like that's just kind of where we're at, and I don't know how much worse it can get, but I'm gonna tell you, they lose to Carolina. I don't know how you can justify keeping your head coach. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't
Like
think you
I
can.
don't think
Yeah,
we've seen any accountability through the 6 straight losses, right? And the thing is, if you lose a seventh and your head coach is saying it's on me to do it, and he hasn't been able to get the job done, then you got to make the change. Like I get it, you might not want to, and you don't think that might be best for your organization, but I think the results suggest otherwise in this
yeah.
case. And look, I don't call for anybody's job. Like I don't think that that's
No, no,
always
no,
a
no.
good thing, but it's just at the same time, the business is the business, and
Right.
it is a business, right? And so you've seen other teams make that change and see what happens. And look, you just put in a point right now where you're just wasting DeMario's time, you're wasting Tyron's time, and you're wasting Cam's time. You're wasting all these free agents that you sign. You're wasting everybody's time when you're just stuck in the cycle. And so whether it needs to be reinvigoration or something, it's got to change because these players, guys that have worked their tail off and guys that have chose to stay in this organization, they don't deserve this. They just
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah. You're right. I mean, like that's a great way to look at it, and it really is about the business, right? It's not about any individual person, human being, anything like that. It's just the business, and you have to be able to, like, you're gonna have to answer to someone at some point. And that's kind of where the Saints are. Let's play this hypothetical out a little bit, if you're willing.
Sure, let's go.
Let's say that happens. Who's your interim head coach? Because you got to grab that person from inside the building, just for everybody's sort of edification. It's not like you're going to go and hire some offensive coordinator off of some other team and
No.
bring them in. You can't do that until the offseason. So you got to have an interim, typically somebody from within your organization, as opposed to somebody that's just like out on the street. And so who's your guy
Yeah, I
or
think we
person?
can agree. I think we can agree. It's Riz. It's
It's
Darren
Riz,
Rizzi.
right?
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
got to be like there's
yeah.
nobody else. Like I think that you look at other people, they wouldn't do a Clint Kubiak. I know they got experience with guys like Rick Dennison and stuff like that. Joe Woods has some experience, but when it's all said and done, Riz is a guy that has the respect of the players, and he's a guy that is somebody that has been looked at in some aspects, for
Yeah,
other
he interviewed.
potentials.
He
So
interviewed along with Da.
yeah, I mean, so I that would be where I'd go, and I wouldn't say it magically just turns around or anything like that,
No,
but,
sure.
if you were to do something like that, I mean, hypothetically, Joe Woods is your defensive coordinator, you know what I
Right.
mean? So, you got somebody running the offense, but I at this point, that would be what you would look in-house and then see what happens the rest of the year and then go do your coaching search, if
Yep.
I think the biggest problem here is when DA came on board, we were promised and assured that continuity would be something,
Mhm.
and there hasn't been any continuity. Like I'm literally thinking this, and this is off topic, I guess, in a way, but I'm thinking through and going through all these different scenarios. I don't know how many streaks have fallen under Dennis Allen's regime. Like, I mean,
Right.
coming into this
Yeah.
game, they beat the Chargers 4 straight times. That's gone. They had this record over the Falcons. They had this record over this team. They had all these different things where the Saints team was practically a machine, and all of that has just faltered under this regime. And so it's disheartening if you're a fan. And when you look at that type of stuff, it's just maddening to see that
Yeah.
it's going to continue. And yeah, I don't know.
Yep. No. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. I agree with you on the what would be the appointment in this hypothetical situation of Darren
Yep.
Rizzi as the interim head coach. One of the additional reasons that I'll add as to why I love special teams coaches as interim coaches, because they have a relationship with every player, offense, defense, special
Yep.
teams. They have a relationship with everybody. And so being able to lean on somebody, that's why I love when teams, like when they appointed Rich Bisaccia over in Las Vegas, who should have got a longer run and more opportunity than he actually got. Then they tried to backfill that with the AP hire, and you see how that's turned out for them. But I mean, just being able to sort of have that situation to where you're appointing and going back to, no one's losing ground, right? When you go from a defensive head coach to an offensive coach being appointed as the interim coach, then that ends up giving you a situation where the defense ends up kind of losing ground. Vice versa, the offense loses ground. You appoint the special teams guy, boom. And of course, he's also assistant head coach. Like, we should remember, he's not just the special teams coordinator, but he's also the assistant head coach. And so he literally genuinely has a relationship with the roster. And I think that that's a really important thing, especially the young players, which are who you're going to be really, if you go into that situation where you do move on from a head coach, you're evaluating the hell out of your roster after that. That's going to be a lot of those young players. And a lot of those young players come in and have to try to carve out, outside of quarterbacks, have to try to carve out a role on special teams. So I think that that's the other reason why I like Rizzi to be that guy if the Saints go about that. Joe Woods, defensive coordinator, it's already built in. He called some plays over the course of preseason. He's called for other teams and all those other things. So I think that would make sense. A lot of the roster construction is constructed in a way that is aligned with what a Joe Woods defense would look like as well. So I think that he would have a handle on the personnel and all that. The only wrinkle that I would throw in is if you elevate a guy like Michael Hodges into something in addition to his linebacker role, linebacker coaching role. That would be the only thing I would be kind of curious about. Like, if you want another associate head coach or assistant head coach or something like that, that could be a way to kind of, give him something, because that's a guy you don't want to lose in the offseason typically.
Yeah, I honestly, not that I'd say they'd move on from Joe Woods, because I like Joe Woods. I think and Marcus Robinson do a good job. But if they did change out some of that stuff, Hodges could be a defensive coordinator. He's interviewed for it. They got to get something new at this point, I guess. But again, we're beating this with a dead horse, and I'm laughing
because we're playing out hypotheticals and stuff.
Yeah, of course. And then Rose talking about the Falcons taking over the dome. I'm telling you guys, if you beat the Panthers and Falcons come in and embarrass you in front of the fans that actually will show up, you have no leg to stand on. You cannot lose that game. I'm just sorry. You cannot go to that, go win, and then become 3-6 and then go to 3-7 because the Falcons just hand it to you. Just can't happen. Just can't. All right. Well, we've ranted and raved long enough on this one. It's definitely a non-traditional style post-game recap, I guess, if you will. And so we got a little bit more to say today. It's a little bit spicier, I guess, if you will, but
more opinions.
Probably more opinions. We try to stick to more facts and all this and different things, analysis, but again, enough's enough, right? Like, you had it, you can't stand it no more, right? Like Dave Chappelle and the Nutty Professor. Silence enough. I can't take this no more. Use something else, but I'm not gonna say that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ross, what you got coming up on LouisianaSports.net and Locked On as we get out of here?
I did my numbers to know piece from the game, mostly something for Saints fans just to kind of be able to hold on to in terms of having like some nuggets to be able to discuss throughout the week around the game, how things happen, why they happen that way. So that's up. I'll do a corresponding episode of that in the morning, doing some film study over the course of the, I'll do a film study over the course of the week as well, and continue to get that stuff up. And then more, keeping track of the news. We learned that Juwan Johnson is not in concussion protocol today. So that's good. He was evaluated for a concussion at the end. So I'll write a story on that and some other things coming up all throughout the week as well, which you got coming up over at Saints News Network.
Well, it might take a minute. I kind of hinted a little bit to it, but I was just, like I said, thinking about all the different streaks and different things that have just fallen under,
Mm-hmm.
over the past several years. And so I'm going to start doing some research on that and start putting that together. And so I just think that, it's probably salt on the wound at this point, but at the same time, this is a fan base. And look, I get it. I'm older than I look. I've lived through the early, the late of the 90s. I mean, I'm an 84 guys, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
know the 90s Saints. I know the late 90s Saints, the 2000 Saints, and all this other stuff. So like, I get it. Like the Saints have obviously, there's been harder times than this, right? But at the same time, these newer fans that have come on in the last, I don't know, 15 years, I guess, if you will, they don't know this side of the Saints. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's not, I don't know if it's that bad, but we're getting to that bad really quickly. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Been very tough.
Yep. All right. So, all right, guys. Well, look, we appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button, and all that good stuff for Second and Saints. We'll be here. We'll have game preview. I might try to do some stuff in midweek now and just kind of be a little bit more present for us in the channel and stuff. But that's either here nor there right now. But again, thank you guys for tuning in so much on behalf of Ross Jackson. Or can I say your name right?
You nailed
on
it. That was
behalf
great.
of Ross Jackson. Golly, I need some medicine and I probably need to get over this jet lag, probably. On behalf of the great Ross Jackson, I am John Hendricks because I can get my name right, at least.
There you go.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks.
Love you.